There we go. Okay, so welcome everybody. This week's or this month's webinar, we're looking at GDPR. So we're looking at General Data Protection Regulation. That's what GDPR stands for, as we all probably know. I've got my colleague that's doing the webinar this month. So that's Douglas Hammond-Shea, and he is my colleague. He's a registered mental health nurse, and he's also our clinical safety officer. So he's going to be doing this webinar this morning. It'll be for about sort of 45 minutes to an hour or so. So I'm going to pass you over shortly to him. As always, you'll get, that's okay, Nicola, don't worry. Nice to see you. As always, you're going to get access to this webinar, so it will be available for you to all access for any other colleagues that might wish to watch it. So as I say, it'll be about 45 minutes to an hour. And once Douglas has done the presentation, we'll have a little question and answers session as well, where you'll be able to sort of unmute yourself and ask any questions you need to. So as I say, it's GDPR, so General Data Protection Regulation, that we're looking at this month. And it's, of course, relevant to all of us in our practice to ensuring compliance when it comes to sort of handling data. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Douglas to give us the presentation. Thanks, Douglas. Oh, I think you're on mute still. That's it.
Guaranteed never fails. Thank you very much for the introduction, Lucy. Hope everybody on the call is okay. I'm not sure if we can make this a bit more interactive. All I see is cameras off. I feel like one of those dating programs that do. Everyone turns off the camera. So that's fine. The most important thing is we get through the materials together in a collaborative way, okay? So can you just give me a thumbs up just to indicate that I'm not talking to a bot? Thumbs up, everybody. Fantastic. Michaela, I'm not too sure if you even are real. DJ Singh, how you doing? Yeah, you could do it virtually or in person. It is perfectly fine. Okay, because I want us to have the conversation as well. It's not about me just talking to you about GDPR and why it's so important for us to factor in its instruments and its statutes, but for you to share your own experiences as well, so we can have that shared learning experience as well. So just as Lucy has described, I'm a clinical safety officer, registered mental health nurse. For over 20 years, I've worked in the community, I've worked in care homes, I've worked across the whole field. So as this subject relates to some of those practices, and Lucy as well, I think we're best fitted to give you this short presentation. Are you okay for me to proceed to the next slide? Let's go. So what is GDPR, right? In a nutshell, it is the legal framework that governs how we manage, store, distribute personal data. Yeah. We know that we're no longer in the EU. We signed up, the UK was one of the most instrumental countries in the formulation of GDPR. And since we voted to leave the EU, we've decided to maintain its credibility, its instruments. So we're still bound by GDPR, okay, to protect individuals' privacy. So, yeah, don't put that there. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, to protect people's privacy. So the broad scope of GDP covers all sectors. So I don't want anybody to feel you're being singled out because you're in the care home industry or in the domiciliary care. You know, all sectors across the field, from aviation to retail to sports to technology, we all have to be bound by GDPR principles, okay? So it's about, essentially for us, there's a heightened sense of awareness to GDPR because we're working with vulnerable people, okay? Healthcare data is particularly sensitive, and retaining that, we've seen in the papers when companies such as tech companies, for example, play fast and loose with personal data, and they've been found out from selling that personal data to other companies or having data leakages all over the place, and that erodes trust, and it's a major issue. So retaining personal data, particularly in the health care sector, is so important. The GDPR has various instruments, right, that strengthen the rights of individuals. It doesn't take away the rights, but it strengthens them. It recognizes that when they are in the receipt of care, they have the ability to ask and ensure that their information can be removed, altered where applicable, and there's transparency in terms of how we manage that data. Okay, there are very strict uses on how we use patient data. For example, if you're working in a care home, I'm not too sure how many people are directly working in care homes or are carers or are in the community in some shape or form. But if we are harvesting patient data to register them on our system for care using Carebeans, we cannot automatically now decide to send them vouchers for Waitrose or Asda. We cannot upsell them. The reason why we are using their data is the primary purpose. We cannot then change that primary purpose without getting consent, explicit consent from the service user, the patient, or carers. Okay, we cannot just change that at all. Again, so we talked in the previous slide about why GDPR is important. We're talking about safeguarding individuals' rights, yeah? Ensuring there's privacy, data security, and making sure that that's front and center in everything that we do. I spoke earlier, a few months ago, about the trust element. GDPR promotes transparency in data handling. Who here handles patient data or shall I say service user data? Can I have a show of hands who here handles that information? Okay, cool. So you're you're the custodians, as it were. You're front and center with how GDPR affects the privacy of an individual because you're handling that data. Okay, so in the spirit of transparency, when you go for training in terms of how to use your system, you should never deviate from the training. For example, if you're given digital tools like an app to record information, patient data, you should not then decide I'm going to keep a parallel patient record system on, say, a notepad or several notepads, several scraps of paper. And those scraps of paper, you might find them lying around in your house, in your car. You know, you might lose that. Then those are leakage points where sensitive patient data could come into the hands of other people who have no right to access that data. So please make sure that you maintain using the technology that your company has given you to hold on to that data, because in your data protection policy, it will stipulate all points where patients' data or service users' data is accessed. So you should not be having your own mini system. Okay, and if you have written down, for example, information returned to a patient, that must be destroyed, completely destroyed. I cannot stress this enough. It has to be destroyed, anonymized to the point that nobody can recognize that information. A quick story. I was working in a care home just before COVID, and service users get their mail as well delivered directly to the home. And for some reason, service users were ordering packages from Amazon. So they're using the care home address, and packages are coming in. Now we give the packages to the patients, and then the packages themselves we threw away. Well, not me personally, were being thrown away without the address being taken off and really gone to town with, so that nobody can understand who lives in this care home. Okay, that was flagged up to the organization via the postal worker, who just saw in the waste box how we were disposing of parcels. So it's not just looking at the actual care episodes in itself. It's anytime you have access to patient service user data, you have to abide by GDPR principles. Okay. There are hefty fines when we breach GDPR's strict handling rules for data. Some of you might have heard of Meta. This is Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg's company being fined billions for misusing it's customers' data, not even customers. It's not patients, it's customers' data, being fined literally billions. And you take a look at your organization, the margins that you make, there's no guideline to how the fine is distributed. It's basically they'll take a look at your organization, your business, and then they'll decide based upon the damage that was caused by breaching the GDPR and what will it take to send a message to your competitors, to other companies doing the same thing, not to breach GDPR. So it could be set at a level that could actually bankrupt your organization. The margins that we work with social care, domiciliary care are very, very minute indeed. So you do not want to fall foul to GDPR. You do not want to fall foul to that at all. Has anybody got any questions in terms of what I've said so far? Okay, good, good. I don't want you to feel like you've been forced for this. This is an opportunity for us to have dialogue as well, okay? Right, so the key principles for GDPR. First one, lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Personal data must be processed lawfully. You should not be eliciting patient information, service user information without a lawful reason to extrapolate that information. For example, if you're caring for an individual in the community, before you then add another member of their family to your record as supplementary information, you should also ask for that consent. Okay, so personal data must be processed lawfully. So you must always have a legitimate reason to access that information, to process that information. Outside of that, you shouldn't. For example, very loosely, you shouldn't be sharing access to Carebeans to anybody that has no access to Carebeans. We use what's called role-based access controls. So you shouldn't be sharing, oh, come and look at the work I've done today to your loved one back home and showing them your caseload and what you've done. That's a breach of GDPR principles. Okay? You have your access based upon your role, and that has been agreed by your organization. You should not breach that at all. Personal data must be processed lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner in relation to the data subject. Where we know consent might be an issue for some of the clients that we have, some of the older, infirmed clients that have, say, mental health challenges, depression, early onset Alzheimer's, a loss of memory, all of these things. You still have various protocols in place before you can then say, I want to get this information from this individual, such as deprivation of liberty. You might be aware of those principles there. Capacity Act as well. You need to take a look at that. And then you can move through those channels and then do an assessment whether or not is the information you're holding against this individual correct. So there's a purpose limitation. Personal data must be collected for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes and not further processed. We spoke earlier about sending service users vouchers for Waitrose and stuff like that. That's not why they've agreed for their information to be on your system. You're then using it for something different. So that is not considered a legitimate purpose, yeah, for further processing, yeah, because the process is not compatible with the reason why the data has been taken from the individual in the first place. We must always be thinking about the least amount of information to support the care that we're providing for the individual. The least. As a clinician myself, Lucy, you might want to testify to this. There's a habit that we want all the data. I want to know everything about this individual for me to feel I can make an informed decision in terms of the care. We should reverse that. What is the minimum amount of information we need to support this individual? Bear in mind, a lot of systems are siloed, so you don't have access to education data. You might have access to, say, employment data. Okay, these are held on different systems. But equally so, during our investigation to help resolve a problem, we can also ask other people to contribute to the care record. And those other organizations are also bound by GDPR. They will have to go through their own GDPR assessment and ask themselves, is it fair and lawful for me to share my client's information with your organization? Okay? So personal data must be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary in relation to the purposes for which they are being processed. Another one that comes up all the time, and I don't know about you, but over the last 20 years, I've lost the ability to write coherently. If I look at what I write, it doesn't make any sense. This is also true when you take a look at what we're scanning and uploading into the client's record. It has to be legible, it has to be accurate, it has to be truthful. When we know the inaccuracies in the data, for example, one that comes up all the time is the wrong name for the individual. We have not reconciled what is the name for the individual, meaning patient Joe Blogs likes to be called Stephen instead of Joe. And we're using the wrong name within the record because we might be using his preferred name over his given name. And these things can really wreak havoc, particularly when we're doing discharge letters, discharge summaries, transfers of care. You know, when we're using the wrong name, we need to agree and find out what is the rightful name of the individual. And where do we typically get that from? Does anybody want to share? Where do you get your access to the truth regarding a individual's name and address? Do we just take? Yep, you can take it from the person themselves. That's one. That's one. Where else can we get it from to confirm that the system is correct?
Professional notes, GP.
Absolutely, professional notes and GP. The GP is the master data controller for individual. Even if they've opted out of having their information shared across different systems, there is always a minimum amount of data held at GP level. So what happens if you take a new individual, a new patient into your service, and there's a mismatch between what the GP is telling you their address is and their name is, and to what you are receiving? What then do you do? There's a mismatch. So your system is telling you that this individual is called Frank Ocean, but the individual is telling you their name is Jonathan Stevens and a different address. What then do you do? There's a mismatch.
Hospital number.
Yep, you could go by the hospital number. What else could you do?
Couldn't you go through social services?
Yep, you could go for social services. Yes, you can. Yep.
Ask the person if it's a known as name rather than their registered name.
Yes, you could do all those things. The most important thing is you remain curious and you explore where the truth lies. Because if we just take it as verbatim, even though you know there's a mismatch and you do nothing about this potential mismatch, you're in breach of GDPR because you, at the point of receiving care, have not demonstrated that you are proven that this person is who they say they are. So you potentially are delivering care that's inaccurate because it's not to somebody that's legally registered with those credentials. So you can also approach the GP being the master data controller, because particularly when you find that somebody's moved from care home to care home, Sometimes the GP's address has not been updated to demonstrate the new location for the individual. This happens a lot when you're looking after, say, for example, a younger cohort. You're providing care in the community for, say, young adults. Some of them have their home address and they go to uni. So the uni address, the GP doesn't have. So you've already got a mismatch of data. Yeah. So you notify the GP of that mismatch, and then you take it from there. Okay. Speak to other services, social services. Somebody said as well. Speak again to the individual. But what you're trying to do is get to the version of the truth. The GP is always the master data controller. Yep. So personal data must be accurate and when necessary, kept up to date. This is what I'm trying to really emphasize: kept up to date. Every reasonable step must be taken to ensure that personal data that is inaccurate is either erased, changed, ratified to be accurate in the system that you're using. You should not continue using it with inaccurate information. Right, so what are your patients' rights, service users' rights, citizens' rights? You have the same rights as the people you provide care for under GDPR. In any industry, whether it's your Sky Sports subscription, whether it's at the post office, banking, or health, or education, GDPR covers all verticals, all industries, and you have the same rights, but we're laser-like focusing on the patient's rights here, okay? So they have the right to access, yeah? That basically means a patient can request access to their personal data held by healthcare providers. They have that right. So when we are writing, say, a clinical notation from a home visit, it's important that that information is accurate and descriptive to support the care without putting in such things such as, I went to see Doris and she was a pain in the backside. Yeah? The individual has the right to access their notes. So putting things that are subjective in there without substantiating them is also a breach of patients' rights. Okay? Many people have been caught foul on that one. A patient or individual has a right to rectification. A patient can request inaccurate data to be rectified or completed if incomplete. That could be, my preferred name is Doris. I want that added to the record. I want to be referred to Doris in all our interactions. They have the right to do that. Rectification also can mean even genders. As people who have transitioned, you have to ensure, absolutely ensure, that you're using the correct pronouns and the right gender, specifically, including change of names. I've had investigations where organizations have refused to take on board an individual who has transitioned, okay, in terms of the data. They refuse to change anything on there. You can't do that under GDPR legislation. They have right to erasure. Patients have the right to have their personal data erased in certain circumstances. Can you think what circumstances, I'll probably give you a clue already, where this would be a thing, where an individual would want their personal data erased?
Like you mentioned about the transitioning.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of them. There's a star prize as well, if you could think for something else as well.
Their previous name.
Yeah, yeah. They want to change the
name.
previous name. Yeah. What do you think would have happened to an individual that would say, actually, everything about me then needs to change?
In the meeting.
Free to write in the chat, guys, if you don't want to speak out. I can
Yeah.
read your chats out if you want, that's fine.
Yeah, go, yeah. Type in the chat anything you like in terms of what do you think would change for somebody to say, okay, what how I was referred to before, my data pertaining to myself now has changed from this point to that point.
When they get married.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's the good one. That's a good one. Yeah, yeah. Maiden name. Yep. Another one.
So
10
we've got a
seconds.
couple of things on the chat. We've got
Yep.
maybe bad experiences, someone
Yes.
said.
Yes.
Also logically where something is inaccurate,
Yes.
maybe.
Yes.
And would it be they wish that no one ever knows? Would it be that they wish that no one ever knows that particular information?
Yes. Okay. All great comments. There are times when people have gone through such an ordeal, such as when police have been involved and a forensic offense has taken place, when someone has to take on a new identity because of serious harm that they've been the recipient of. Yeah, they can have their right to complete erasure, and in fact, the police will support you in doing that because they'll need to have a new identity made for them. It can work in both ways. Oddly enough, it can work for the individual who's been the recipient of harm, and also in very high profile cases, such as the Bojo case. You know, the Bojo boys that abducted that little boy and brutally killed him. When people like that are released back into the public, they have a new identity as well. So it does work both ways, right? The right to portability. This basically means a patient can request the data to be transferred to another care provider, and you have to facilitate that transfer. Okay, there might be inciting poor care within your organization, might have never got on with somebody, but then it's saying, I want my data moved off your system onto another system. You must be able to facilitate that task. Sometimes this is not easily done through integration of systems, and where you cannot have a seamless integration piece, you can still think about how can you reconcile the data, lift and shift it into another system. Sometimes that means scanning, uploading as well. And then you archive the individual's personal information on your system that is only accessed by administrators. Okay. Okay, here we go. Data breaches. Right. It comes in three key steps to consider. Recognizing when a breach has occurred. Recognizing when patient data has been lost, stolen, or accessed without permission. Do you have any stories that you want to share regarding identification of a breach? No? Oh, you're so good. Everyone here is so good.
So that would be
Fun.
so that would be such as like developing WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, developing WhatsApp groups. Yeah, most definitely. A lot of people think wrongfully that WhatsApp is a secure medium for sharing sensitive information, patient data. It is not. WhatsApp is owned by Mark Zuckerberg. It's an extension of Facebook. It is not secure at all. And on top of that, you've not gathered consent from individuals to store their data on WhatsApp. You've seen this happen in the media with politicians. WhatsApp groups. You saw that with Boris Johnson with the COVID inquiry. Suddenly, they grab his phone and they say, we want to look for your phone and read all the WhatsApp messages as relates to how the lockdown was being managed. But guess what? Boris Johnson couldn't remember his password. Yeah? That's how he got away from that. So creating WhatsApp groups and putting in WhatsApp groups, if patient sensitive information is a breach of GDPR, absolutely. It's an extension of social media. Okay. Anybody lost a patient file?
So John's actually just saying here on the chat that he remembers a member of staff dropped a handover sheet and it was discovered by a member of the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember doing a one-to-one observation, arm's length, with an individual which was high risk. It was a forensic placement. And I was trying to write down his behavior. And this is early days. I left that piece of paper somewhere, and it was found by another patient. These things happen. So the question arises then, what do you do when there's been a breach? Sometimes these things are done accidentally. There's another famous case of the royal family. Prince William's wife was giving birth to Harry, and they had an unscrupulous Australian-based media outlet contacted the hospital, and they pretended they were from the care team, and they got out of that individual onto the phone, that nurse, all the information they needed to know about. What's the firstborn son called? Is it Harry? No, William.
No, it's Catherine's. I can't remember the children's names actually.
George, wasn't
George.
it?
George. Is
Yeah,
it George?
I think
George is the firstborn, right?
Yeah,
Is it George? Yeah, it was George.
it was George. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the nurse, thinking wrongfully, without going through the right checks and balances, that she's disseminating information to another care team, shares sensitive information. That individual ended up taking their own life within 24 hours because it was a media frenzy. There not only was these unscrupulous people live streaming the conversation to their audience base in Australia. So once that was involved, CI5 or security services come down. Can you imagine how that nurse must have felt? You know, you're the one that has breached, the confidence in your individual. And think about the hospital itself, the trust. This hospital, it's a private hospital that takes high value individuals. We're all valuable, but they work with high value individuals. That trust severed. That individual ended up taking their own life within 24 hours of it. It creates victims. It's a gut-wrenching feeling when you know you've breached GDPR. Okay, so we have to be very conscious of that at all times. So what we need to do is notify the authorities, but there's a step process that we need to consider before we go straight to ringing 999 or that the authorities that govern GDPR, right? You need to have an internal investigation of what has happened. What is the order of magnitude? How big of a breach has this been? What has been the damage to the individual? And also you then have to liaise with Carebeans. And if you liaise with ourselves, you'll be speaking to Lucy, you'll be speaking to myself as a clinical safety officer, and we'll be doing what's called a root cause analysis. We've been thinking about, okay, how did this occur? Is it an issue related to the actual system? What safeguards can we put in place, right? Before we escalate it further, it needs to be managed internally to protect not only the individual that has been part of the breach, but also the wider public as well. You have to do your investigation internally before we expose it externally. Okay, and 9 out of 10 times there's safeguards that we could put in place before even thinking about escalating it. We've not had one incident where we had to go to the ILC to escalate it further. So that also could involve communication with the individuals as well. Yeah, inform the affected individuals about the breach and provide updates on the situation. You need to provide reassurances and apology. Look, I'm sorry. This has happened. All those humanistic factors come into effect when we know a breach has been identified. Because what we're trying to do quickly is to reduce harm to an individual and rebuild trust. Okay? Let's see. Right, so types of data breaches and protocols, right? there are deliberate breaches, right? Can you give me an example of a deliberate breach that's not in that list? A deliberate breach.
Wouldn't it be when somebody's like hacked the NHS care
Exactly.
patient files or something?
Absolutely. The NHS has been hit several times. And in fact, NHS gets hit weekly, even daily. But sometimes those safeguards are not enough to repel what's it called? The bad actors that want to exploit the NHS by pulling patient data out. You know, sometimes they do get through. We've seen the WannaCry outbreak. You've seen them phishing for emails, try to get into your system. Now they're using AI to help to pretend they're humans to get into systems. Who's used a chatbot? Who's tried to get access to the British Gas customer services or BT, and they ask you, guess what? It's easy. Why don't you use our chatbot instead? And then you type into a chatbot instead of waiting all day on a call. Who's done that? No, because nobody has used a chatbot at all. Interesting. So these chatbots, right? These services, a lot of organizations offer individuals in terms of improving the customer service experience. In the States, there's a famous case where, the car manufacturer Chrysler? The Chrysler system was hacked by somebody using artificial intelligence. And so the artificial intelligence went through this chatbot thing, this Q&A thing, and it managed to get Chrysler to sell them their top-end vehicle for $1. For $1. Yeah. So you got technology now where the bad actors are using it to pull out your patient data, and they could use it and to resell it to other people that they can make money from. So the accidental breaches, the deliberate ones, unlawful destruction, loss, and disclosure of personal data. Another one that is like deliberate breach, but sometimes it's done maybe through a lack of awareness. If you got, I sometimes when I walk my dog, I know on my street there are carers providing care to individuals on my street. I've overheard carers in the car talking about the individual before they go into the house. The windows are down, they're talking about the individual, just airing it out, their frustrations. That too is a breach. I have no right to know what they're doing. I have no right to know that at that house is somebody in receipt of care. Okay. So the reporting timeline, you have to notify the ICO within 72 hours of discovering a breach. But like I said before, way before you get there, there's going to be an internal investigation. And then the outcome of that investigation between Carebeans and your organization will determine what needs to happen next. Okay? Communication of individuals inform affected individuals of the breach. Again, phishing attacks. Who has received those emails from a Nigerian prince asking for money for their student fees or whatever it is? Who's received these odd-looking emails? Okay, these are phishing attacks. If you see an email that is too good to be true, it doesn't make much sense. Okay, you don't open it, you delete it, or you delete it and notify your IT service desk straight away. Okay, but do not open it. Do not open it. Who uses those memory sticks? Do you use memory sticks to plug into your computer to move data back and forth? Good. You should never use those things unless they were given to you by your organization, meaning they're already encrypted. Okay. Again, sending sensitive data to the wrong recipients. We spoke earlier about that poor nurse that took her own life in sharing raw data. Okay. Don't do that. When you're sending even an email organization to organization, think about what's the minimum amount of information I need to send to social services, to the GP for them to understand who they're talking about. You don't need to give everything in the subject line. You don't need to do that. The hospital number should be enough for people to track who they are, and maybe a salutation, like the what's it called, first letter of the first name and surname. Okay, don't go full on board and sharing everything via email, because you don't know who opens that email at the other end. Okay, is that okay thus far? Good. We spoke, now we can start whizzing through some of them. We spoke already about the major ones, but here are other common GDPR breaches, right? We talked about incorrect recipients, sending personal data to the wrong recipient. Yeah? Sending patient data to info@blah.com doesn't make much sense. Who's the individual that needs to receive that information? Don't send it to a generic email address. Accidental deletion, accidentally deleting records or data. Our system has safeguards to make sure that does not really happen. Okay, but some people can be malicious and try to do that. Why do you think somebody would want to accidentally delete records of a patient clinical interaction?
Could have been an incident.
Yes, an incident. The biggest serial killer in the UK is who? Serial killer, the biggest serial killer.
Shipman.
Harold Shipman.
There you go, Harold Shipman. And it was his job title?
GP.
GP.
GP. So because we are in that situation, in that unique, and also there's Lucy Letby as well that's going through the court system right now. So we are in a very unique and sensitive position where a lot of information is bestowed to us to trust and hold on to securely and safely. Okay, when things go wrong, all the attention, all the media will be on us. So we have to really think cohesively about what we do about managing sensitive data. Loss or theft, ransomware, we talked about that. Cyber attacks, again. So a cyber attack can go, not only just pull your data out, but it can also change the people's information and pull it out. It could do so much other stuff. Water damage, if you're in an environment where your information is on paper and it's not secure, water leaks can damage records. I've seen in the NHS, before a lot of their processes were digitized, we had lots of paper-based records, lots of them dating back now probably 80 years worth of people's data on the old medical records, files as thick as that, right? Real records stored. There's a trust, I will not name the trust, but they were stored securely, or so they thought, before they managed to digitize them, and meaning scan and upload them into the system, the computer system. A large portion of them were destroyed by rats, just rats coming there, is eating the paper. Okay, so there's damage in the area where you store the information. Unauthorized access. Carebeans uses role-based access control, so nobody should have access to the system outside of what was agreed by their management team. Okay, so if you see somebody accessing parts of the area as in God mode, like they are an administrator, that needs to be flagged up. Yeah, or if you feel that we could make that tighter or more secure, let us know. We do that work. Yeah, and also malicious software is almost the same as ransomware as well. Right, the major GDPR violations to avoid. The major ones are the non-compliance of data processing principles. Every organization should have a data protection policy. You must have a document somewhere that your staff understand about how they manage and process data. It's so important. And also the GDPR, you have to ensure all your staff go on GDPR training. Okay? Insufficient data subject rights fulfillment. Yeah? Lack of legal basis for data processing. We spoke about that in relation to sending your patients vouchers for Marks and Spencers or Waitrose, right? Failure to cooperate with supervisory authorities. When the ICO get involved or any other organization for investigation, you have to comply with them.
Can I just ask a quick question as well, Douglas, about how long medical records and things and service user records should be kept by Carebeans? Is it for 7 years? Is it? Am I right
yeah.
in saying? Yeah.
Yeah,
Just wanted to
7
clarify.
years.
Someone asked. Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
7 years. But
Yeah.
again, it's almost like when you look at it from a perspective of, say, the speed limit. The speed limit could be 30 miles an hour, correct? Well, that is the speed limit. You should be driving below the speed limit. So what I mean by that is when we're talking about 7 years to hold on to data, it doesn't mean on the seventh year exactly you get rid of the data. You know, I've seen organizations hold on to data far longer than that. Based upon the sensitivity of the data that you're holding, you have to make that decision. Okay. So again, Meta, 1.2 billion fine. Yeah. Right. So we can speed through some of these. So we have to think about ensuring all our devices are encrypted, right? So don't use any of those memory sticks that you buy from Amazon or eBay to transfer patient data back and forth. You don't do that. Okay, you have to use the devices provided to you by your organization. Implement password protection protocols so that routinely people are forced to change their passwords. Carebeans, we thoroughly recommend two-factor authentication at least. Okay, limit access to authorized staff. We spoke about role-based access control. Sometimes if your organization is going to be inspected by the CQC, they might ask you for access to your system. You must be able to ensure that if that's the case, they have access to only the information that they need to see to facilitate their transfer. So to facilitate their observation, their assessment of your practice. Yeah, don't give them access to all parts of your system. Provide regular GDPR training. That's a given, right? Right. Informed consent and applied consent. Do you know the difference? Okay, you can write down in the chat what you consider informed consent is. I can see someone smiling, but they're on mute.
So Shanti is saying informed is all information given and choices given. Presumably before giving consent. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's informed consent. You've got all the information at hand, right? So if I was to go see my GP and extend my arm out like this to have my blood pressure taken, what sort of consent am I giving? You can write in the chat as well. So I go and see my GP and I extend my hand like that when it asks to take my blood pressure. What sort of consent is at play?
Just have a check on the answers, just bear with. Implied, Claire says implied consent, and Derek as well, implied consent.
Absolutely. So we know there's a difference between informed and implied consent. But if I was to do this, right, and then the GP gives me a flu jab in my left shoulder, would that be a violation of GDPR, patient rights and everything? Why is that? Because it was implied consent. We all agree this is me doing this was implied. I'm under the impression the GP has not said to me, I'm going to put the the blood pressure cuff on my arm, etc. Hasn't told me the process. It's just my understanding of what's going to happen is if I do this, the cuff's going to go on my arm, it's going to be pumped up, blood pressure is going to be taken. But nobody has said it explicitly. But the majority of people expect that to happen. So receiving a jab to your arm is a violation of what I thought was going to happen. This gets played out in varying degrees across the whole care episode. There's some things that we as professionals might think the individual knows exactly what they're consenting to. So it's important for us to understand what do they actually know and confirm before we proceed with the procedure that we're doing. Are you aware that we need your personal information, but we will need to share it with other professionals in order to support your care? Now it becomes implied consent. If my GP does this and tells me, do you know, Douglas, right? Before I do this, keep your arm out there. I want to jab you on the other side because you need your flu jab because you're of age. That's now implied consent now. You see, if I say yes, go ahead. So although I'm like this, I expect that because I've got now more information. You understand? I can make that call myself. So don't take for granted what an individual understands when we ask them for their patient information. Yeah, so normally when you're going through admitting somebody into your service, clerking them in, whatever way you call it, this at this point is where you need to ascertain how much do they actually know around GDPR. If you've got a leaflet, give them a leaflet, but talk them through what will happen and how you're safeguarding their information, right? Specific consent is much more granular, covering each specific use or disclosure of a patient's personal data. Okay. What have we done? And then obviously freely given consent, we spoke about that. So GDPR affects our daily operations, our daily tasks in the sense of how we document patient information. You have to ensure the patient files are stored securely to protect sensitive information and to comply with GDPR guidelines. Your clinical records should be up to date within 24 hours. So if you're out doing visits, it's important that that information is in the system within 24 hours. That's just good record keeping practice. Okay, within 24 hours. Communication, use secure digital channels when sharing patient information. WhatsApp is not a secure data sharing channel. Speak to Boris Johnson, speak to all these people who are being caught out by using WhatsApp. It's not a secure data sharing channel. Okay. Share data with relevant and authorized parties to ensure information is accessed on a need-to-know basis, with the minimum amount of information shared across the board. And obviously, when an incident has happened, some people have a system called Datex, a way of recording serious or untoward instances, record what has happened, and share the information with your team, who then communicate with Carebeans, and we have our own risk management process that is ratified through DCB 0129 to manage those risks and ensure that we mitigate those things from happening. Okay, do not take it into your own hands straight away without having that thorough, robust investigation, which I will lead with Lucy's support and the rest of the Carebeans to make sure that we understand what's happening, why it's happening, and what safeguards we need to put in place to ensure it doesn't happen again. Is that okay? You guys are being great thus far. It's 2 more minutes, if I may. Am I standing in the way of your coffee? Some of you must be.
That's all right. We've got a couple of minutes left. We're fine.
Okay. So let's bring all back together as a recap on the journey that we've gone together with. Yeah. GDPR is about protecting everyone. It affects everyone on this call, not just patients, service users, and clients. Yeah. It protects both the care providers as well, by ensuring data privacy and security, and the reputation of your organization as well. I must say, once trust is severed, you don't want to work for a care facility that has a bad reputation, that is deemed untrustworthy. It's a principled approach, yeah? Understand the key tenets of GDPR for managing and processing data. And also that goes through to how we report as well, and regularly review how your organization deals with patient data. Okay, so I think that is that in a nutshell. I think let's read other ones. Yeah, necessity, proportionality, security, timeliness in data handling, authorized access. Only authorized staff should access patient data. Now on to questions. Does anybody have any questions they would like to present? I cannot see the
I've got the chat here. Feel free to speak out, anyone, if you've got any questions. I know we've hit 12 now, but if you've got any questions, do ask or pop them in the chat.
So I'll ask
Yeah.
a question. So going back to the WhatsApp group, my work forced me to have the WhatsApp group on my phone.
yeah.
I've told them it's a GDPR breach,
Yeah, it is a
but they're
GDPR.
quite happy with that, but I'm not.
Yeah, I think in your case is sometimes, because I think that you have to raise the awareness to it, because a lot
Yeah.
of people are ignorant to it. They think it's secure because they invite the people into the WhatsApp group. Yeah. So by
Okay.
virtue of them doing that, they're thinking it's secure. So you need to provide evidence to say to them the contrary. Just Google it yourself. WhatsApp is not secure,
Okay.
not used, and you see a long raft of reasons why. It's because of the security protocols that govern it. Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook owns WhatsApp, so that information feeds WhatsApp. Feeds Facebook, and also interfaces with Instagram. These are the three-part process that Mark Zuckerberg has for social media. It's an extension of social media, your WhatsApp, because through the mobile phone numbers, it understands your Facebook profile, your Instagram profile, and if the data that you have on your Facebook profile is your family pictures, where you went to school, etc., etc. It is not secure. If you are communicating, say directly, say through what's called a Discord service, which is what I would recommend, you have far more secure channels to deal with, because not only you have multi-factor authentication to access those things, but then also they're not bound by your data that's shared across other social media channels. And what you need to ask yourself is, as well, we've seen it with the police. The police are under investigation for example, you had those sisters that were brutally murdered in South London, okay? And the police were having their own WhatsApp conversations regarding what was happening, saying really hurtful things about the family members, about the media. They were saying racist things, sexist things. They were posting on the WhatsApp group pictures of the bodies, you know, and all of that was available for the investigation, because WhatsApp is not secure. All of that, so yeah, everybody cries foul, but WhatsApp, and I'll repeat, is not a secure channel, and it's not a channel for sharing patient information. You can have a WhatsApp channel for let's organize our Christmas party. Yeah. But if you're going to put Paul, a patient's name, Paul, what's his name? Mandy Smith, into your chat, into your WhatsApp group, ask yourself, does she need to be in the WhatsApp group? Why is she even in the WhatsApp group? Carebeans is your system for recording patient data, not WhatsApp. So I would strongly recommend they rephrase that and look for other solutions. There are lots of other secure channels. If they want a channel for communicating, between staff, just Google that. There are other competitors that have something that allows them to have that two-way communication between just staff. There are lots of out there, but do not use WhatsApp.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay.
And that I'll just jump in there. I'm just aware of time, so we'll perhaps need to wrap up, I think. But Oliver's just put, what other ways of communication would you advise? And so I'm guessing actually just with what you were just saying then, Douglas. I'm not sure, Oliver, if you're a customer of ours and use Carebeans, but I guess it's about keeping as much sharing of information within the Carebeans system, isn't it? Maybe we can message staff within the Carebeans system by the messaging service, so that's far more secure than your WhatsApps and all that type of thing, isn't it? So you can hand over information about your service users to managers, etc. But as long as it's all sort of kept within the Carebeans system, that's kind of mitigating that risk, isn't it, of these kind of dodgier ways of communication like WhatsApp, if that makes sense. Lovely. Okay. So I think probably, because we do need to sort of wrap up now, it's 12:05, but I'm just wondering if, I know that's been really good, Douglas. Thank you so much. That was really interesting for me as well. That was brilliant. I found it really informative and really helpful. I'm sure everyone else has as well. So thanks for that. And I'm just thinking, if people do have more questions, feel free to direct them to me and I can forward them to you, Douglas. If anyone has any more questions, we can answer those via email. If there's anything else you just sort of wanted to know, my email is lucy@carebeans.co.uk, and I can sort of forward those to you, Douglas, perhaps, and if anyone does have any more questions outside of this. But also, I was just going to say that yes, that was it. Just quickly before we end, about when you were talking about the sharing of information to people and getting their consent, just to be mindful that we also have on the system the the consent forms. It turns into a mental capacity assessment if they can't consent, but it's just to be mindful that we do have those, so that you can put as much detail in about what information might need to be shared when and with whom, i.e. to other health and social care professionals. So that's just one way of evidencing that you've got consent about that. It's just being mindful that we've got that consent form on the system, just as one of the ways to sort of remain compliant with your GDPR and sharing of information. So I think probably we need to wrap up there, but thanks so much, Douglas. That really has been very, very useful. We've got the same webinar on Thursday, at 2. So if anyone wants to come and join that, any of your colleagues that you think might find that interesting, come and register. You can do it on our website. It's Thursday at 2 o'clock. So it's the same webinar. We shall do the same again. So if anyone, colleagues wise, wants to join, just let them know. Let's just have a quick look at the messages now. Oh yeah, everyone's just saying thank you. You're more than welcome. Thanks ever such a lot, Douglas. That's been really, really useful.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll see you again on well, not you again, but your colleagues again on Thursday.